Hello, we're here today with Greg Bickert, Chief Product Officer of Unicli and Managing Broker at Inspire Property Management. Welcome, Greg.
Good morning, Thomas.
It is great to have you with us. We're talking about something exciting in the world of strata, making decisions when you don't have a meeting. How did this rise to the top of your knowledge pile?
Oh, well, it's just a constant battle. I've been in the industry for 20 years now. And I mean, I went from phone calling and showing up at buildings to now the way it is for everybody. It's almost all emails, maybe text messages. But everyone through my entire career, there's this expectation that council member can call you and just say, this is what we're doing. And they don't have a meeting. They don't have delegated authority. They just want it to happen because they're elected to council and they see that as their job. And just constant battle. I just keep talking about it.
Excellent. So before we get into it, tell us about Unicli.
Yeah. So, well, as I mentioned, I've been in the industry for 20 years. And, fast forward maybe halfway through my career, I ended up starting my own company, Inspire Property Management. Um, and I ended up working with this brilliant bookkeeper. I sadly lost her due to a move. She had to move with her husband down to Vancouver because that's where all the work was at for her husband, who's a product developer. And we stayed in touch. Their child came to my daughter's birthday party one time, and her husband came along. And he was looking for a new project. Basically, he's a developer himself. He's built several successful softwares for other people, and Frank was getting a little frustrated that he's building these awesome pieces of software for others and not really building anything of his own. And he was just looking for a big idea, something that's not solved yet. And I just unloaded on him for the next 4 hours at this birthday party. And he got inspired, did a bunch of market research, and basically confirmed, there's a lot that we need to do to solve what the strata managers are doing. And in our case, we're focusing on communication for strata managers, primarily in email, but all forms of sort of written communication is our focus, streamlining that process using AI.
Excellent. And obviously, your inspiration was your career in the strata management world and your time at Inspire. Tell us about Inspire.
So yeah, Inspire Property Management. I started in 2015, and I was at a company before. It was one of the largest in the Okanagan. It ended up being bought up by a larger company elsewhere, or from elsewhere rather. And while that was sort of happening, that's kind of when I decided to move along. And I learned a lot from that company. It was some good, some bad, but you learn a lot from all of those things. And when I started the company, I wanted to do it a little bit differently. I wanted to be more people focused, which I mean is probably everybody sort of says that you want to take care of your staff better than you were treated at the previous company. But I've tried to do that throughout. We're very supportive of families, the women in the office, people with disabilities, and so on. We try and think about these things actively and talk about it actively, and be very supportive. And it's led to the Ethics in Business Award from our local Chamber of Commerce, other similar sorts of recognition. We're a top fundraiser for Special Olympics Canada through Motion Ball. Just all of these things are sort of ingrained in our DNA now, to be supportive and inclusive. And it's
Excellent.
great. We're focused on strata. It's our thing.
Wonderful. That's great background. Let's get into it then. What decisions are being made by strata councils between meetings, under what circumstances, and how do they get it done and stick under the Strata Property Act and their bylaws?
Well, the list is probably a lot shorter if I say what decisions aren't being made between meetings. Let's see, that would be 0. So they're all being made between meetings, it seems. So I guess basically the framework here, the legal framework here. I'm not a lawyer, but I've read all the cases and everything that apply here. But the courts have looked at this, the CRT have looked at this, and they've all agreed that decisions made between official council meetings, without any delegated authority, those decisions are not valid. They're just simply, you're not supposed to act on them. They're not valid. There is some recognition that they will happen anyway. The original case where this all stems from, the Azura case, it sort of talks about like emergencies and things like that, although it didn't say that this is the only thing it applies to. But I would explain it to a client, obviously, if a doorknob is broken and you can't get into the emergency stairwell, obviously you can go ahead and replace that. You don't need to call a meeting and wait a week because not everyone was available. You can go ahead and spend that money and deal with that. And then the courts say you can ratify that decision at the next meeting.
Right.
But even then, that sort of highlights there's still like a process even for something silly like that. So when I'm talking to a client, I'd usually start there. Like, why don't you just delegate authority for spending on certain types of things? Maybe just even label emergencies, right? For emergency spending, council can spend whatever is necessary, whatever they feel is appropriate. Oh, my background just faded. There you go. You can see on my spare desk. Yeah. Should have cleaned up a little more. It's a strata management job. What can I say? It's busy. But yeah, if you delegate authority and you need to spend money, then you don't have to ratify it. It's pre-decided that you can spend the money. That's a good starting place.
That's a great starting place. What amount of budget can be reasonably placed into this emergency spending category?
Yeah, emergencies are hard though too. As a category, right? Because it might be roofing and there's a water leak, and that's pretty straightforward. You just call the roofer, do what's necessary to stop the water coming into the building. So, carte blanche is fine in that sense, right? But then there's all that squishy stuff of like, well, is it immediately necessary, or is it just like urgent because the hot water's off and people are going to have to, sponge bath for the next week versus 2 weeks from now or something?
Yeah.
That makes it difficult. So you probably want to have some guardrails on it. And I think that's another good area to go into. So look at budgets, look at, what is the cap, or do you want to set conditions on when people spend money with that authority? Maybe they have to check in with the rest of the board. So they technically have authority to spend the money, but they need to at least run it by them if it's over, I don't know, $500, say. Just check in.
Right. So that door handle that is a potential life safety issue can be dealt with. Installation of hot tubs on all patio units is not going to fall under that category.
Right. Yeah. Or even just like hiring a new janitor or something. One quit.
Right.
Like, we're going to spend more than $500. Like, pick your balance. Where do you want to check your colleagues on the council and make sure that they don't just do whatever because you've given them this general authority. You want to have at least that check-in, and maybe even just boundaries where it always needs to be a council meeting.
Yeah, that is actually great. And how much delegation do you see at Inspire from strata councils for this activity? Do they give you any delegation on some of these minor decisions to keep things moving?
Yeah, we, like most strata managers, do use the SPA BC contract. So that's very popular in BC. So within that contract, it does give us the authority to spend almost anything so long as it's within the budget. There's some authority to spend, for emergencies. So from our, I guess, contractual point of view, like, we're kind of okay if we need to spend something, but we all sort of follow our licensing obligation to also make sure we're getting direction from the client, regardless of what the contract is they're saying. So I view that as more of something to protect me if I follow the instruction.
Right.
But what I'm more concerned about is how I'm getting that instruction. So the council itself, do they have that authority to direct me to spend that money? And a lot of times the answer is no, they've not delegated anything.
Right.
And let's move off that for a second here, because I think there's lots of problems with delegation, and a lot of times councils want to do it because it's easy, right? And they're just like, oh, well, we'll do the same thing that they do for Inspire. We'll just let you spend anything that's in the budget. Just go ahead and spend it, and then we'll talk about it later. And then you overspend, and people are unhappy. It's not great. A better thing to do is to break this habit of trying to make an email decision, right? So don't just email each other and just say, yeah, let's go ahead and hire ABC company, and we'll find out later that they don't have WorkSafe or insurance or whatever. Like, we won't have that discussion, but we'll make an email. Just stop doing that. You can have a meeting easily. I don't know why this industry is so afraid of having a 5-minute phone call at noon tomorrow to quickly ratify a decision or quickly discuss something.
Yeah.
It's not hard. And that then is an official decision. And, if you need more than 5 minutes, you've got time. Talk it through. If I'm on that call, I'm going to say, well, maybe we should confirm they have WorkSafe. Maybe we should check that they have insurance before you proceed. And then maybe they say yes, but subject to those conditions or whatever.
Makes sense. Yeah, because you don't want to meet again tomorrow at noon.
And you know what? If we do, not a big deal. If you have 5-minute scheduled meetings like that, you've agreed, you've kind of had the discussion by email, and now you're hopefully mostly firming it up. They should be quick like that, and then they're official. But then you don't necessarily need to have this again, the delegation where they have carte blanche and they spend something. It's like, well, this is important, but we all agree it's important enough that we'll have the meeting tomorrow. Let's do it tomorrow at noon. I mean, I've got a phone system where I can just auto dial everyone on council, and just, meeting starts, everyone's phone is ringing, they all just pick up and meeting starts, right?
Well, that's pretty great. How do you track and report on decisions then, whether they're between the meetings or whether they're these sort of mini meetings?
Yeah, I mean, that is, I got to certainly talk about what I do, but it is a big problem in our industry.
Right.
That is a number one issue that strata managers bring up, right? How do you keep track of all of this? And I'm going to reframe that slightly, just because I think a lot of times the question is coming from the perspective of, how do I create minutes from the email discussion? And from that perspective, I'm usually saying, well, actually, that's just telling me you don't understand what's happening here. You can't create minutes from an email discussion. You can have an email meeting, and that is different. If you have an email meeting, which is another tact here, you can do that. In fact, a lawyer at a PAMA seminar last week was advising that this is his recommendation. So he says, just train the council what an email meeting looks like, and you follow the process of a regular meeting. It's a meeting because you said the meeting was called to order. We're all in favor of the minutes from the last meeting. You go through the normal pieces like you would just like any other meeting, right? And then, all in favor of this proposed motion. You wait kind of for the people to reply, and then after a period of time, you terminate the meeting. Easy to create minutes from that because you followed all the normal steps of a meeting anyway. So now you have the documentation for that decision that was done, by an email meeting,
right.
Versus just email discussion, which again, not valid unless they've had that delegated authority.
I have never heard of an email meeting, and I kind of am dreading the inbox situation of a discussion among multiple board members over a period of time via email. Is this a tool? Is this something that you've got an idea for, or?
No, I tend to agree. Although it's not as bad as it sounds, frankly, but
Right.
it's still not my favorite. It is what the lawyer last week recommended as the solution,
Fascinating.
and it's I've tried it, and I'd say it is useful for sure. If you can't get everyone together on someone's
Right.
driveway tomorrow or
Yeah.
on the phone tomorrow at noon, whatever. Sometimes you need to just do something that's maybe a little more convenient for people. An email meeting might take multiple days. A lot of the training that goes into this, though, is making sure they know, don't reply to this email meeting subject line. That thread is in the meeting. Other emails need to be in a different subject so that they're not getting mixed in. So we're not having a bunch of discussion that's now part of this meeting that you didn't intend to be.
Right.
It could get unruly. And
Very good point.
I only employ this when it's like one or two decisions, right? We've had the regular email back and forth.
Yep.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, we've called the meeting now, vote on these two items. The meeting is
Yes.
going to be adjourned, again, in 3 days or tomorrow or whatever it is. You set the deadline. You terminate the meeting at that point, tabulate the votes, generate minutes.
So this is to document and ratify a decision that you maybe have informally come to, or you're bringing those members that were not in those informal conversations on side with as you're making the decision.
Essentially, right. Yeah. I mean, technically, you're avoiding the ratification process by doing it.
Right. But
But you could ratify it if it's maybe a council that meets quarterly,
yeah.
and so they just want to, make an invalid or unofficial decision valid earlier than their next scheduled meeting. But it was urgent. Again, use the hot water tank issue. They might have met in the hallway. It was sort of informal. One person wasn't available, so they couldn't really call it a formal council meeting. But they got a hold of them later. Whatever. Ordered that hot water tank, right? And then you've got this owner that's, there's always somebody, right? They're going to go to the CRT. They're going to sue that you didn't follow the correct process, and the council are going to want to at least deal with the making their decision valid. So there could be reasons to do it when it's not urgent.
Wow. That's very cool. I've never heard of an email meeting in this context. And how common are they, Greg?
There's some buildings that do it regularly. I'd say it's mostly like commercial stratas. They're pretty comfortable. They're easy to train to do this. Residential strata, maybe not so much. It takes a little more effort, but it's not that uncommon. Anecdotally, maybe 5% of our clients use it, so it's not a ton.
Right.
But the ones that do it, they do it efficiently, right? It's a normal thing.
And as a property manager, when you have this email thread to document the meeting, are you making minutes from that? The emails aren't the meeting, or they're the notes to the meeting. How do you turn that into a meeting minute that gets presented and shared
Yeah.
with the owners?
Well, like say, if you treat it exactly like you would a regular meeting, and think of it kind of like the transcript,
Yeah.
right? Think of it like the same sort of thing, right? So, the meeting has been called to order. The time is now blah blah blah, right? So you say the things that you would like an in-person meeting, and then, I mean, putting it all together, you just search for the subject line. That's not too terribly
No, it
hard.
makes sense. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And then creating minutes is very easy from that, of course. Again, treating it like a transcript. There shouldn't be too much there.
That's awesome.
The other thing for me, though, is like, say, only a small percentage are doing the email meeting. So I don't want to suggest that this is my solve to this. It's one of the tools you have available. Delegation is another tool. But that quick meeting is, I think, the primary tool for most residential stratas. It's accessible. It's easy to understand what the process is. There's still a little bit of pushback from, the council president that thinks that they're in charge of everything. But you kind of get them there. It's not hard once they understand, and it can be literally just, we're all meeting in John's driveway tomorrow at 5 p.m. after everyone gets home from work, and we're going to go ahead and make a decision on which landscaper or which elevator contract we're going to do. the color of the paint, whatever it is. Let's just schedule that meeting, and then we'll send Greg the notes, and he'll create minutes from the notes and fill in the blanks and follow up with us because we didn't give him everything. But it's not that much work. Ideally, they'll let me be on the phone with them so I can just ask those questions on the spot. But sometimes they just schedule something, even a recurring thing, and they don't need to be these big, complex, structured meetings. It's just, we're here today to decide on X, and we've already talked about it by phone or email, whatever.
It sounds remarkably efficient. I like that. That's great.
It's easy. And it solves the problem that we as property managers have, right? We're all complaining about it. And again, there's solutions to it. They're easy solutions, but we're all complaining that we're getting all of these emails and we're being told to do this and to do that from these people that don't have authority officially. And we also don't want to be the bad guys and tell them, well, you don't have authority, right?
Right.
So it's easy to just train them.
And training them is then the question. So you need to inform them. You need to give them some of that guidance to tell them, okay, there are these methods of making decisions. In these circumstances, delegation might be okay. In these circumstances, arranging a meeting, either by phone or in person or even electronically, is possible. Electronically, I mean by email if they're not going to do it by a video conference.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that education process work for you? I mean, we live in a province where there is no strata education, no formal strata education. So it's all on the individual manager.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some good resources, but you're right that there isn't a clear set of or series of courses to take as a new strata council member. These are the essentials for your job. I think CHOA is doing some good work to try and make something available. They've got a great YouTube channel. Frankly, check it out if you're a strata council member. There's a pretty good series. They've got the condo classroom. But yeah, the reality is for us, it's the strata managers, and as an industry, I'm finding the strata managers themselves are also not really well informed of all the ways to deal with these invalid or informal sort of directions.
Right.
So we need to do a little bit more there as well to get the information out and give them the tools, and hopefully we'll have a little bit less of this. Well, John, who manages my strata that I also own over there, he goes ahead and just follows my instruction. He sends me, I send him by email. How come you won't? If we educate John.
You can see how young strata managers who are entering the business could get quite quickly turned by strata council members who said, well, we've always done it this way. And, so I can see them sometimes being pushed around, if you will, by what they think is appropriate, practices for making decisions. So
yeah, absolutely. And the AI, we built a pretty good AI solution, but the downside of AI is these people that are insistent are oftentimes also using AI, and they're going to use a solution that's going to give them, it's going to use some Reddit thread or something from somebody else's opinion and state it authoritatively, and they're going to push you. And as somebody experienced, I know the answer that they're incorrect. But a junior manager, ooh, that is tough, right? It sounds very confident, very informed. Yeah.
AI is great at telling you what you want to hear, isn't it?
Yeah.
We both have experienced the hazards of what AI can do, and I mean, it's an incredible tool. It's just making sure that you've got the right guardrails on it so that it can be productive and net positive. On all of your communication. Tell us a bit more about that. In what ways are you leveraging or helping managers leverage AI at Unicli?
Yeah. So what we've built is, well, at least the main thing that people are using it for is in the emails. So we've built an add-in that sits in your Outlook, It connects to your client's bylaws and minutes, basically everything that's on your server related to the client that you want to make available to it. So you don't have to upload or anything. It just connects and finds the relevant stuff. And yeah, you get an email. Somebody asks you, can I get a cat? You can quickly pull up the bylaw, quote the bylaw. I can double check it just by, the add-in lets me link to it. I can pull up the bylaws that way, so I don't have to go to the server, open it up myself and read it. I can just click the button, confirm that it's given me the correct answer, of course. We're confident that it is doing that, but we still say, we're professionals. You're in charge. AI is not 100% perfect. Do not rely on it. It's not ready to be, everything automated. So we've built around the professional staying in charge, but we keep working on giving correct answers and improving the quality. So yeah, most of it's just replying to emails and staying on top of that mundane kind of deluge of
Well, that's it. The mundane deluge is a consuming an inordinate amount of time, whether it be questions about pets or bylaws or alterations or bylaw complaints.
Mhm.
And they all need to be handled or addressed in some way. And to the extent that you can allow the technology to handle those sort of lower level issues and just maintain the oversight and approval of those pieces of correspondence rather than having to devote your time and or your assistant's time to review and build and craft everything will allow humans to do what humans do best, and that's to maintain those relationships and important decisions to steer the communities that you manage into the right direction.
Yeah. And one of the things I didn't exactly expect, and maybe I should have, but I didn't really expect that, the reception of it from the other side would be so high. Owners actually ranking. We've had the, fortunate, uh, opportunity to survey some of the strata managers' clients before they were using our service, and then after. So they were ranking how their communication skills were, and they're
Right.
saying, like, actually dramatic improvements, which, like, say, was a surprise to me, from one of the companies being one that I assumed was very good at communicating. The client
Right.
still said, wow, that was a big improvement. They didn't know what
I
came.
guess it's
Yeah.
a combination of speed and clarity that they would be experiencing. Is that accurate?
It's, yeah, speed, clarity, and it's the little things that really, again, easy to say in retrospect. They make sense, right? It's the acknowledgement of the problem in the email. So if I'm busy without AI, I used to just address it. So answer the question, assume everything they understand because they sent the email, so it's in context that way. But when the AI does it, it takes a second to do the things that I really should have done all along.
Right.
Repeat question.
Reiterate. Yes, I
Yeah,
have. I have
affirm
you.
it.
Yes, that
Yeah,
that
I understand
context.
your issue. That must be frustrating. Say those niceties, affirm the problem, then answer the question, provide details of it, an explanation of how the Strata Property Act works or what's applicable. I might not have done all of those things. I might have done a smattering of those, over a series of emails. But who has the time, right? That we're just trying to answer basic things.
Yes.
Yeah, and
I
de-escalation.
can see it. I've heard the complaints from all sides. The strata manager that's inundated with low level requests, the committee member on their HOA that asked three specific things of the manager last week and still hasn't gotten a response. The range of perspective is really key in the way that you're able to build technology that will kind of immediately acknowledge, provide them with that polite answer, and then if there is something that requires follow up, make sure that that happens too. Would be really powerful.
Yeah, I think there's lots of solutions, lots of tools available and different approaches. Some of it's automatic. We're seeing portals people are adopting. We don't have a portal right now, sort of, or a chat bot that you can put onto your portal. But that's one of the solutions we're seeing out there. That at least helps people get access to information quicker. Our approach has always been, like, say, keep the professional in charge. So we still want them to read the email, see the email that they're responding to, make whatever changes they feel necessary, of course, and then send it, so they're in full control. And then you've got now, I think, higher customer satisfaction as a company versus a chatbot, because people still, although they appreciate getting an answer quicker, they feel like you've pushed them off to the machine, and they don't
Yeah, they
really
they
appreciate.
definitely do, and quite often we find that a chatbot is not adequate to fully explore the issue. It might answer your cat question quickly, but things are often more complex than that, and there's more nuance than a chatbot
Mm.
can handle.
And
Have you been able to?
I
Sorry, go
was
ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, and then like your reports that you generate, right? Those are super helpful for getting information. That would take, like, I mean, a ton of different emails and different things for the manager to even answer. You're not going to delve into that detail anyway for a realtor, right?
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of tools. I think that we need to start applying more and more of these tools. AI is part of it. A lot of it's just simple things like, again, just, can we schedule a meeting on Friday, and we'll meet in Betty's driveway, and we'll decide which hot water tank we're going with.
And actually, those are the human decisions and the human interactions that you have. I'm not in a strata. I'm in a non-strata row house, which is an unusual construct. But
Mhm.
we redid our roof. Cedar was here before. The neighbors didn't have it. We showed them the product that we were going to use and said, "Do you like the gray or the brown one that matches the existing cedar, or black?" And the vote was for the color that blended in, and so we have, and you can drive into our cul-de-sac and you don't notice the difference, and everyone is happy. So,
Mm.
the human decision is still very much there when you have neighbors, and I think that that's really important. I was
Yeah.
going to ask you next, Greg. Like, have you been able to quantify what this means for a manager with this improved, not only communication from the perspective of the owner, but in terms of freeing up some of their time?
We have, frankly, with AI, I was just saying this to somebody this morning, any information you have from last week, it's already stale. But yeah, we have some sort of recent information. So we did a case study with a property manager in BC, and he'd had struggled with his portfolio. He was trying to make more money. He's a commission environment. Um, and struggled, right, before using Unicli,
Right.
and ended up having to actually scale back. It was just too much, but he still wasn't hitting the revenue expectation that he had for himself. He then adopted Unicli, and sort of the reason we did the case study was we do keep usage stats in the background, and our CEO reached out to him because he saw he was one of our top users in the system, and what's going on? Like, you went from sort of normal usage to suddenly it's like crazy high. And he sort of leaned into it. He realized he could use AI to help him with most of his emails. Again, those mundane, everyday ones that, in our view, you can just one click it. Well, not in our view. You literally can. You can one click reply. It generates it. It's ready to go. And he's going, these answers are perfect, right? Like,
Yeah.
90% of them, there's zero change. There's no input I need to give. They're simple enough for it to answer because the data's there. So he's able to just, like, deal with all of those and still read them all, make sure they're correct, but increase his capacity. And all of a sudden he was able to grow. And I think it was a 37% increase in his take home revenue after, I can't remember the exact period of time, but it was about 6 months. He'd
Well, that's
increased the
fantastic.
revenue. Yeah.
You think about this industry, and it's kind of frustrating to look at it because the average manager is responsible for many more communities than I would have expected, and
Hmm.
it varies based on your geography and the types of communities that you're serving. And but in some parts of North America, a manager will manage one or two communities, and they are paid to manage one or two communities. And here, the expectation is that a manager can handle a very large portfolio. And I have heard numbers that are, pushing 20. Um, I don't even have the mental capacity to organize 20 strata corporations well in my mind. I mean, obviously, it's not my skill set. I joke that I'm a recovering investment banker, so mostly useless. But I don't think I could do it. If you can have technology that will help you, you obviously can spend more of your time and energy understanding those communities and the things that matter. And I think that that's fantastic, because property management should not be about a race to the bottom. It should be about delivering value and being able to make sure that these communities are well served.
I totally agree, and just anecdotally, I ran into a manager last year at a PAMA event, and he had just under 40 stratas that he was managing, and
Okay, I heard that too, but I didn't want to say it out loud.
it's I'm like, how's that even possible? Even if they were all tiny little stratas, at that point, how can you possibly manage that many sets of financials and invoice approvals? And but that was the expectation in the office. They're pushing them, and I didn't hold the or hear the whole story, but I'm assuming it's the usual thing. Somebody left or retired, and here's a portfolio. It's just until we find somebody, and then a year later they still don't have somebody, and you've just not slept for a year, right?
For a year. Yeah. No, and I mean, I have an enormous amount of sympathy for that. I also know that each firm is different in terms of how much admin support that the individual managers get. And obviously, if you've got that support for the bookkeeping and for the admin, then you're able to handle more communities. But I don't think British Columbians appreciate how little they pay for property management relative to other jurisdictions. And, to see BC sitting, I mean, there are lower and higher numbers and lots of different factors, but on average, 30 to 35 bucks a month per door is really low. And you look to Ontario, their rates are 50% higher than they are in British Columbia. And that's despite having bigger buildings where you would expect them to benefit from those economies of scale. And I think that it technology is an opportunity for the property managers in this province to deliver a higher level of service and emerge from this uh, really poorly serving, and I say that to both themselves and to the communities often, method and approach to providing strata management services.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your comment about the race to the bottom, I think one of the things that AI is helping us do, and I should actually also just clarify, I'm not trying to get everyone to get a bigger portfolio or have these obscenely sized portfolios. That's not my goal here.
Yeah,
Um, but you can manage more with less
absolutely.
people, sort of thing, or less personal resources, less personal sacrifice.
Yes.
Um, that said, what I'm seeing from a lot of our customers is they're not, although some of them are reporting still, an increase in revenue, and they're just sort of commenting. I mean, it's nice. I'm making more money, but the biggest difference to me is I'm doing better work. I have less stress, and I see my family more. You know, the money is like just the silver lining, but it's like I can manage what I actually have. My clients are happier. My product is better because I have the time to, again, acknowledge the full concern. I have time to actually read the whole email, not skim the email that I'm trying to reply to get to the point. I can create better minutes. And they love that. AI is a very powerful enabling tool if you do it right.
Agree completely.
Hmm.
Agree completely. There's a lot to gain from this. There's been lots of efficiency technologies in the past that we all take for granted. AI will move in that direction over the coming years, but it's those that adopted early that will leverage these benefits. And so long as they're doing it as you're suggesting, with the the experts still in the loop and continuing to approve, review, train, and learn, I think you're going to see really positive results. And I'm excited for that. And how are you finding that this is changing the way that you work at Inspire?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed us a lot. We're no exception. We thought our clients saw our communication skills as quite high, and we did our own little survey, and again, saw some pretty dramatic increases in how our perceived communication quality had improved. So, it is what it is. We're not exempt, but it's affirming, right? It's nice to know that they appreciate that change, that shift in tone. Microsoft had a problem. It happens about once a year, maybe every other year. Servers go down, and we had I think 2 hours or so that Microsoft was down, right? And our services are hosted in Canadian servers on Microsoft. And I was in a meeting, but I could hear the conversations in the hallway. People sort of joking, well, I mean, Unicli is not working. Should I just go home? Like, what's the point? Doing this the old way. I mean, who knows? It's going to take me a full day to get through my emails now, right? And
That is very
get done by
funny.
noon.
Well, Catherine commented earlier that we can do hard things. Talking about the strata managers and the strata management industry. So a little cheer from her.
Yeah.
And I think Nick, who loves the email meetings. So
Yeah.
no, I hear you. When you lose those technology tools that you've started to take for granted, it can really hurt. We've all been through those email outages at our big firms at some point in our histories, and well, what were you going to do? You really couldn't send anything. We all come to rely on all of that stuff, but that's
Yeah.
great. Greg, is there anything else that you wanted to raise today that you think that strata council members or strata managers out there should know?
I guess I just want to sort of mention that although I'm talking about this as a BC centric thing, the interesting thing is this is worldwide. I've been reading about this a lot. Australia, in the US, they're all talking about the same thing. They're getting this sort of unofficial direction from their committee members, their board members, council members, and they don't know what to do. It's not official. They don't have proper delegated authority. And what I was talking about earlier, it's the same tool set worldwide. It's all practical stuff, with maybe the caveat that email meeting itself, you really do need to look at the local legislation. Not every area. There's definitely parts in the US I've encountered that don't permit electronic meetings. They literally require everything be in person still. So it's not everywhere, but if it's enabled, that ability to have a phone call, have a Zoom meeting, or just call a meeting by email, get it done that way. It can work for you. You've got lots of tools available, and let's make the job easier and maybe push back a little bit that I can't take your improper direction, but I can have a meeting tomorrow at noon for 5 minutes, and we can make that official. How about we do that? And suddenly I'm not acting in sort of a tenuous sort of situation. I can get lawful direction, and they can make a lawful decision.
I think that's fantastic. I certainly didn't know all of the different ways that it was possible to maintain effective decision making between meetings. So this has been really informative for me. Where should people go to check out Unicli and learn more about that business?
Yeah, so unicli.ai, spelled unicli.ai. You can check out an article I wrote about efficient decision making between meetings if you go to the blog section. So unicli.ai/blog. It's sort of recent. I think it's maybe 3 posts ago. So if you're watching this now, it should.
We'll put a direct link under this so that everyone can get to it.
Yeah, I've approached it from the global aspect as well. Definitely peppered in some BC stuff because that's where I'm from. That's what I know best. But but check it
Yeah,
out.
the problems are worldwide. Our terminology is similar to Australia, but other than that, we're all dealing with many of the same issues.
For sure. And I'll just plug that I do also have a link to an older article I wrote for Inspire Property Management, which only operates in BC, so it's very specific. But that post does include some examples of resolutions you could propose at a council meeting when you are trying to delegate authority. I didn't want to get too deep into the weeds in this conversation, but just
Yeah,
quickly, it addresses some of the things you should think about. Again, like work safe, like maybe council members that are going rogue and sort of being a bit tyrannical. Setting some of those checks and balances while you're delegating that authority. I've got some samples there you can use.
wonderful. Yeah, all of those situations have come up on our previous talks, so
Mm-hmm.
I think all of that will resonate, and I will put another link to that one underneath this stream. So
Fantastic.
thank you again very much for that, Greg. We've had some support continuing to come in on social, so that's very nice.
Thanks, Catherine.
Next week, I'm going
Love
to be joined by Matt Strangeman of Condo Assist. He's out of Calgary, and he's going to join us to discuss condo document green flags and what smart buyers are looking for in condo communities. So thanks again, Greg, for joining us. We'll see you.